Hi everybody, I'm Ezra Parzibak, cannabis consultant, and today I'm going to talk about CBD, cannabidiol, this chemical compound that comes from the cannabis plant, the hemp plant, and dosing and why it's important. You can find me at EzraHelps.com. I help patients and advise practitioners and families about how to use medical marijuana properly. You can also follow me on Facebook and join my Facebook group, my Ezra Helps Facebook group for medical marijuana discussions. And you can reach out to me as well at Ezra@EzraHelps.com. But I really want to articulate this well today. What CBD is, it's a big trend right now in the health industry and the medical marijuana industry, but it's really important for people to realize, one, what it does in your body, what it's actually interacting with in your body. And two, something that I find really important as someone who helps people with health, and that is that there's no magic bullets. You can't just take a pill and make all your problems go away. You can't just take CBD or smoke cannabis and magically make your problems go away. That eventually you have to be responsible and you have to consider all the factors of your life if you want to arrive at the health that you're seeking. And it's always a constant struggle for everyone. So CBD, I'm going to talk about what it is, what's happening in our body, who can utilize it, who are the people who respond to small doses and big doses and what it all means for individuals, and then how we might do it, how we might deliver that to our body, deliver a dose that works for us. So let me start at the beginning. The endocannabinoid system. Endo means in our body. Cannabinoid means these chemicals, these compounds that we produce naturally. We happen to have a plant in the world called cannabis that mimics these compounds that we already produce. We call them cannabinoids because we didn't realize we had this huge, important feedback system in our bodies until we started to study what cannabis does in the body. So it's important that practitioners know that regardless of the plant, there's this really important feedback system in our body that's essentially a regulator. It's like having all of the firemen and police and social workers of a city all making sure that the body, the city, is functioning properly. And if that gets out of balance, then our immune system and our nervous system can be out of balance as well. If our nervous system is out of balance, we get anxiety, we can have pain. People have Parkinson's and tremors and things like that, where the nervous system is firing too much. If the immune system is out of balance, we can have autoimmune diseases, we can have IBS, we can have the body attacking itself. So the endocannabinoid system is essential in regulating this. And this is why so many people respond to medical marijuana, because THC and CBD is interacting with our endocannabinoid system. So I've talked about this before, and it will be my metaphor for many talks that I give, and that is separating the difference between THC and CBD. THC is the active and most prominent chemical in the cannabis plant. For decades, that's what we bred for in the plant, and that's what the DEA and the government is trying to stop because it gets people high, and we don't quite understand what that means and whether it's addictive. It's a controversial molecule, THC. Even though THC is interacting with our endocannabinoid system, we produce a chemical naturally called anandamide. This is mimicked by THC. So even if you can't stand the idea of smoking pot, you have anandamide coursing through your body every second. So a good way to think about THC, if we have a problem, so say we have pain, for example, is THC is like calling the fire department. if you call the fire department because you have a cat stuck up your tree, they'll come. They have ladders, the big loud trucks, and they can get the cat out of the tree. And that's fine, but sometimes that's too much for the job. It may scare the cat away. THC can actually exacerbate some issues. If you're trying to use it for anxiety, it can make your anxiety go up, so that can be a problem. CBD, on the other hand, is much more subtle. CBD is not a powerful active compound that changes your cell behavior, unlike anandamide. Anandamide is latching into cells and having a very clear action on that cell. CBD is more like a social worker. If you have a cat stuck up in your tree and you call a social worker, that social worker might be good with cats and could coax the cat down, or maybe they can climb up and get the cat down. But often a social worker or a therapist type person is going to give ways to prevent your cat from getting stuck up in the tree. It's going to, a therapist or a social worker has to work with the person in order to prevent future issues from happening. CBD is very similar in the body. It's actually training or toning our own endocannabinoid system. So yes, we do produce an endocannabinoid naturally called 2-AG, and this is mimicked by CBD. But what CBD is doing is finding its way into our cells, into our nervous system and our immune system, and it seems to just be observing. It observes the action of the cells, and then it decides, sorry, you're out of balance, you're firing too much, you need to bring your own system back into balance. So we actually use the term toning clinically because it's toning your own system. It's not changing your system automatically the way THC does. So that's an important distinction. But it does beg the question, when you're delivering a little therapist or millions of molecules of therapists to your system, how much therapy do they need? How much CBD does your system need in order for it to be toned and therefore go back into balance? Now, the reason why I'm talking to you about this and not a doctor or medical professional or the one you see whenever you go to the doctor is because CBD, although the U.S. government has a patent on it, and they have since, I believe, the 1980s, it's very difficult to determine proper doses. It's very difficult for CBD to perform in a trial in a very uniform way that everyone receives it equally. And this is because, just like therapy, you could have an hour a week of therapy for 6 months and then you're doing great. And some people need 3 times a week for 10 years and they're still struggling with their lives. So therapy is a great metaphor for CBD. There's a really interesting study, or 2 studies I'm going to talk about, that show the diversity or the spectrum of dosing for CBD and what humans might be able to benefit in terms of CBD. So one study showed that on anxiety, they showed that a person who takes 100 milligrams of CBD has a certain reduction in anxiety, but it's about the same as placebo, say. So this was a certain trial. But what they found was they went up to 600 milligrams, and then the person or the people in the trial had a reduction in anxiety. So this was good. It showed that they found a dose, 600 milligrams, which is actually an enormous dose. Normally people are taking about 20 milligrams, but we'll get into that in a minute. But then they went up to 900 milligrams to figure out, okay, what does 900 milligrams do? Is it a more anxiety reduction? What they found was it did not. So there seemed to be the sweet spot. The 600 milligram for this trial was a sweet spot where 900 and less, 100 milligrams, didn't work for anxiety. So what that shows us is that there is a sweet spot for humans, and especially individuals, where you might have the right dose that works for you, but too much or too little doesn't work. This is pretty similar to the common sense. The right amount of ice cream tastes delicious. Too much or too little can be disappointing. But for CBD, there's another aspect that is makes it more confusing. And that is, they've done studies, this is an animal study, so a mouse study, where they delivered a certain amount of CBD hoping to get an anxiolytic or anti-anxiety effect. And they weren't getting it at the dose they wanted, so they actually ended up trying a micron dose. So this is, instead of going to milligrams, you're now going into microns, which is a much tinier fraction. So in a single milligram, there's about 600 microns. And they were giving 1 micron to mice, and they found that that brought anxiety down. So if we're talking about humans and we have 1 micron all the way up to 600 milligrams, we have a dose spectrum that is almost impossible to nail down. But as a practitioner of cannabis and somebody that works with people in order to find proper doses of cannabinoids that will help their health, is we work one-on-one and we try to puzzle out what an individual's needs are. And an individual's needs are not only based on height and weight and what their ailment is. Often there are psychological and lifestyle aspects that can affect a person's response to CBD. So I've had clients take 1 milligram of CBD, basically a single drop that we put on their finger, and they touch their tongue with it, and they have a strong reaction. I've had clients who are hypersensitive to medication, and they are anxious about taking anything new. And that 1 milligram dose of CBD was so activating. They felt it so strongly in their body because they were sensitive that they actually had an increase of anxiety. So I've heard a story of a doctor saying, 5 milligrams of CBD, it's impossible to have a worrying thought. This is a very dangerous statement. It's very possible to have a worrying thought. I've witnessed it. A single milligram of CBD for a human, if we're looking at the metaphor of the therapist, might be like going to a therapist that you don't trust. So you could spend 5 minutes with a therapist that you are creeped out by, and even if you're there to talk to the therapist about anxiety, if you don't trust them and you feel uncomfortable in their presence, your anxiety will go up. All right, 5 minutes of therapy. That's like 1 milligram or even tinier doses of CBD. Then you have people who, I have clients who are athletes, for example. They've been athletes their whole life. They've been injured many times. They are in their 70s now, and they just want to work out in the garden, and they need to take a much higher dose. So I'll start them on 5 milligrams, and then 10, and then 20, and then 50, and we're trying to find a dose where they can actually feel some pain relief from it. And what happens is they often need 20, 50 milligrams a day for 2 to 4 weeks. So it's as if they're getting therapy, where the CBD is going into their system, recognizing that the cells are out of balance, and slowly toning them back into balance. And then after that 3 to 4 week course of CBD, people are noticing, okay, now I'm getting some pain relief. This happens with anxiety too. Okay, finally I'm getting some anxiety relief from it. So in that case, the dose is much higher. So the individual is very important. We have hypersensitivity. We also have people, especially in the medical marijuana community, who are using cannabis, and they are often less sensitive to cannabinoids. And so they can require much higher doses to feel the effects of CBD. It's as if all the THC in their body is just hammering their endocannabinoid system. The CBD goes in there to help. Well, it's like sending the social worker to an area where there's 15 fire trucks. It's just going to be very difficult for that social worker to have a subtle effect. So sometimes I'll have THC users back off on their THC in order to see if we can get the CBD to have a stronger effect in the body. Let me just pause for questions here in case anybody has written anything. just keep in mind that if you do have questions after reading this or seeing this video, you can go to the Facebook page, Ezra Parzubach, Cannabis Consultant, or join our Facebook group, Ezra Helps Facebook group, and I can answer questions in there as well. So, looks like we're good. I'm going to keep going. So, this is the who of dosing of CBD. It's important to know thyself. You have to understand what is your personal preference, what is your comfort level with medications, and how much do you trust the practitioner? If it's just some dude selling you CBD from behind the counter, gives you a bottle at a vape shop or something like that, it might be difficult to understand what that CBD is, ask them and get to know their sense of what that particular CBD's effects are. You might cross right over the dose that works for you, or you might try it for a few days and find, oh, this doesn't work at all, and so I'm going to give up on CBD. It's like someone trying therapy for a few days and then giving up because they're not having any changes in their life. So it's important to realize that it's a lot more subtle, and it requires you to meet it halfway. You have to meet it halfway in terms of your own knowledge of yourself, your ailments, your response to medication, and how well you are at tuning into your own body and feeling the effects of the CBD. So, I'm also going to talk a little bit about how we, just checking to see if anyone's asking any questions. I'm going to talk a little bit about different methods of getting it into your system and how this can affect you. So right now, if you're watching this or you're curious about CBD, you might have a specific ailment, or you might know someone that has a specific ailment. And it's such a wide, CBD is such a wide range of things that it can treat. And this is a good time to mention that the FDA has not approved any of these comments about CBD, although there's really fascinating studies, like I mentioned, on anxiety and mouse models and human models for CBD, and controlling muscle spasms and reducing pain, all of these great trials. Everything has to be approved. Anything that's a drug has to be approved by the FDA. So it's important to acknowledge that they have a role too in making sure drugs are safe. So any of the information I'm giving is not FDA approved because there is no pharmaceutical drug that's CBD, which is liberating. What's great about that is that CBD is just a supplement. CBD comes from the hemp industry. Hemp is just another form of cannabis, just another word for cannabis or marijuana. And they extract it from the hemp industry and sell it. And so you can buy it anywhere. You can buy it off my website, but you can also buy it from health food stores and various places. The key is what to take into your body, how much to take, and when to recognize whether it's helping or hindering. So the simplest way to take a tiny dose of CBD is to just get, and this is how it's typically sold, and that's in a bottle of oil, for example. CBD is a lipid, it's an oil. It's often sold in something like coconut oil or olive oil. That's also an oil, a lipid, so it dissolves it. It goes into your system, and you absorb the CBD, and it starts to have its therapeutic and toning effect on your system. Oils are a great way to start because I feel that they are addressing the deeper systemic cell imbalance that you have in your body. So if you take a maintenance dose of a CBD oil, those oils are penetrating into tissues deep in there, delivering the CBD throughout your body and not pinpointing on one spot necessarily. So you can get a more of that toning effect over time. I found that with clients, if they do CBD in an oil form as a maintenance dose and do my course of CBD, so they do it for a month or more, then what happens is they need less of it. It's like therapy. If you go to therapy, 3 times a week because you've had some traumatic event in your life, eventually you only need it once a week, and hopefully you only need it once a month, and then eventually after that, you go off therapy. CBD should be the same, that you work with it in your system, you get benefits from it, you start to notice the changes and the toning. And because CBD is a regulator, it will actually tell you, if you're tuned into it, that you've had too much. What I've noticed is that people who take it for anxiety, for example, at a certain dose, they've found the dose that works. Eventually, they start to feel a little anxious when they take that higher dose. So that's a good time to back off the dose and realize that it's starting to flood your system too much. It's like having too much therapy or too many therapists, right? So tuning into yourself and backing off from that is important, and then you can reduce your dose of CBD. Another thing I've noticed is stomach aches. So people will take an oil CBD even for IBS or for pain in their body. And it might help for a while, but then eventually they get a stomach ache from it. And we're not sure, okay, is it the olive oil or is it the CBD? And I think there might be this effect in the GI tract as well, whereas the GI tract says, okay, we got the therapy, we have everything we need, let's take it on our own a little bit here, give us a chance to utilize the toning effect of the CBD so you can back off the CBD. So that's a really interesting aspect of it as well. And then a micron dose. So I'm going to sum up here with an interesting story. I saw a lecture by a doctor who was talking about CBD, and he was mentioning the story where 1 micron, so this is 1/600th of a milligram, was having an anti-anxiety effect on animals and on mice. And this is extremely difficult to deliver a dose this small, right? If you have a 1 milligram dose that fits into a single droplet of oil, you would have to divide that droplet into 600 equal parts, 620 to be exact, equal parts in order to get a single micron from it. It's almost in the category of homeopathic medicine, where we're starting to even see the amount of CBD that's in there. To me, I'm very skeptical that might help. But he gave a really interesting example, which I think speaks to medical cannabis and why I like it as a healing herb. And that is, he said the best way to get a single micron of CBD is to brush up against a hemp plant. So he said it somewhat facetiously, because that's not a typical dosing mechanism to just touch a plant. But it does speak to the back to nature and connection to nature that many people feel when they are either using medical marijuana or especially growing their own medical marijuana. And that is, we're natural organisms. We come from the earth, plants come from the earth. We spend a lot of time making that distinction so that they don't hurt us, so that they don't poison us, so that we feel safe in our homes and free of wild animals and nature and things like that. But we have to remember that it's really important to have a connection. And people who are sick often feel disconnected from their natural healing ability. And having real plants, especially medicinal plants, around you in your home that you smell is providing that subtle dose. So I encourage people to get a hemp plant, plant a hemp seed and gaze at a plant. Brush up against it every once in a while. Gazing at a plant is a way of delivering even a smaller fraction of a micron dose. And that is something we can feel when we go to a garden and we look at plants and see the beauty of that and acknowledge the beauty of that. So this sums up my CBD dosing lecture. I'm Ezra Parzybach. You can find me at EzraHelps.com. And you can follow me on Facebook and join my Ezra Helps Facebook group. And I hope everyone got a sense of how magical and powerful the CBD molecule is. And if you have any further questions about it, feel free to reach out to me or ask questions in the video feed. All right, take care.